Okay, so I want this session to be kind of more of a discussion, and I'll just bring up a reminder of what it was right here. How to become an effective business agility coach in today's world. And, there are all sorts of things I could talk about. And I think at one time I thought I might talk about those things, but I've been talking about those things. There's no surprise. And I think there are also three shifts that I think are very important. I wrote something about this morning. These are things you can do instantly. And it may not appear that you can do them instantly, but you can. Like systems thinking. Well, I remember it took me a while to appreciate systems thinking. I read The Fifth Discipline. I think I had a head start though on that. I'd read Deming. I'd studied Deming in the 80s. So by the time I read the Fifth Discipline, I already had a good sense of systems thinking because that's Deming stuff. And maybe that took me a long time, and maybe I'm forgetting that it took me a long time, and maybe I'm saying people can do it easily when they can't. But what I wasn't taught back then when I was learning it was relating my past experience of what systems thinking was. I mean, the guy was amazing, but I look back on it and I realized he left that out. So I think the key in learning is this: take advantage of what we already know. To start over seems to be just an absolute insane thing. Shifting our focus off us and the people we're trying to help, in the heat of the moment, that's very difficult. When you're mad at somebody, it's their fault and F them. And I understand that too. But when you're calm, you should be able to remember that. Like when you're building a product, don't build it, the system you're building, think of them, and cultivating a sense of agency. So I admit I had thought I was going to have a presentation about this, but when I've talked about all these things for so long, and it's just been like water off duck's back, as they say, I decided I wanted to do something different. And hopefully this will be valuable to you. Got to follow my second point there, right? I do think this will be valuable to you, but I admit that is recording. Part of it is that I'm kind of frustrated myself. And I think I need to understand where people are. And I think this understanding will help you as well. So this is kind of a joint, let's get some understanding to things, because this is one of the few times, and I've been in this business for 54 years now. I've been doing something with software since well, I've actually had hands-on since 1970, but in 68 and 69, while I was in high school, I was reading about computers and AI and all that. Yeah, it's hard to believe. There was an AI lab back then. Pat Winston, I remember reading his book. I forget the people who wrote Perceptrons. A horrible mistake um, that kind of highlight AI into the world. And even though it was mostly wrong, I base that not just on my opinion, but the most brilliant guy I ever worked with or knew at IBM Research, he kind of explained it, and we did just the opposite of what they said. But anyway, that's another story. So the point to me is we know three things that are mostly overlooked in this industry: what to do, how to convey it to other people when you're a consultant, and how to train people in it. And I just got to say, all three of those are being done horrendously wrong in today's industry. And what I started saying in the first time in 50 years, I see the tidal wave coming of the next wave, and it's just more of the same. It's more of the diminishing our ability. We've gotten into like frameworks are the answer, and now it's AI is the answer, and neither one address the real issues, which is people, change, and what innovation is. So we're just having a new set of characters playing out the same path. Now, this is maybe my funky mood, I admit. My wife asked me what was going on. I said, well, this isn't bad. I'm in the middle of I'm in the middle of dealing with issues. When you're dealing with issues, you have this stuff come up. And eventually, it took me a long time in my life to realize this. This is a part of the process. And judging it as negative because it doesn't always feel good is not a good thing to do. It's part of the process. It just takes some time. It's like exercising. It hurts sometimes. I mean, don't hurt yourself, but you know what I mean. It's just part of the process. So this is just part of the process. So I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying here. I'm trying to work through some stuff, and I want us to work through some stuff. So this isn't going to be just a chat and me, a deranged Al, today. Don't worry. I have a plan. I have a program. I have some ideas. I just wanted you to know where I'm coming from, because I believe that Agile is not anywhere near as complex as it looks. That we've been sold a bill of goods that it's complex. There are people making their livelihood off that it's complex.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Frederick, did you mean to talk, or mute yourself if you don't? Yeah, that's better. Just come off
sorry.
if you want to. No worries, no worries. I'll do that for everybody else I see too. So my opinion is this. This problem is not anywhere near as big as it looks, but somehow we've been convinced we have to go to framework, so we've stopped thinking for ourselves on the presumption we can go faster, ignoring the fact that no framework is teaching you how to think, and that's what you need to do. Now, I know most people don't want to do this. Most people want frameworks. They want the crutch. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about you all here. Okay? And I think AI is just I mean, I love AI. I think AI is brilliant. We use AI. We've created, Thomas is here. I saw him earlier, created we have the Amplio stuff in there, and it's an amazing tool. I use it every day. It saves me so much time. But it's not going to solve these three problems of being empathetic, leading, and innovating. Maybe eventually, but I kind of doubt it. And I have philosophical and spiritual reasons why I doubt it. Okay. That doesn't mean AI can't become self-aware. I have no idea whether it can or not. Certainly, AI can become very protective. I get that. You don't need to be self-aware to protect yourself. Just just be given a command, all important, protect yourself at any cost, and then that's the program it'll run. So, these are separate issues. So here's what I want to do. I'm just acknowledging where I am. And what I wanted to do is I have two things here. You might notice this sailboat thing. I'm going to show you the two things, and then we're going to do an exercise. Okay. And yeah, thanks, Thomas. Now, of course, we're going to have to rebuild it with all these new terms I've created, but it's automatic, and we don't mind the few electrons dying to get that done. As I joke, electrons really just energy. They go to another state. They don't really die, so don't worry about it. So here's what I started with. Let me tell you my thoughts as I started with. See, there is something about frameworks. They have an advantage. There's no question they have an advantage. They give you a starting point of how to organize your thoughts. But there are disadvantages. By the way, here's the lie in the framework, though, or the misbelief. Frameworks are not necessarily, am I spelling this wrong, necessarily the best way to get a quick start. See, the logic exhibited by people in the space is really weird. Frameworks provide a quick start. Absolutely. Does that mean they're the only way to provide a quick start? Are they the best way to provide a quick start? See, people don't ask that. Isn't that weird? Yeah, they are a way, but doesn't mean that they're the only way. And these kind of questions, the fact that these kind of questions are not asked is kind of odd to me, but it reflects our lack of engineering and scientific approach. Yeah, Joseph.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment first. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to comment on that frameworks topic, and is that frameworks, especially Scrum, because it's the most popular, and the second one will be SAFe, have become hated. Inside of the development community, you can hear just the mention of frameworks, and there's a percentage of the IT sector that hates them. And as a consequence, it starts to hate those that teach them, right? Which is something that I've encountered in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I've been seeing that. There's good tests. Why is Scrum and Safe hated? Okay, by the IT group. And I'm actually glad you say that because I do actually have a self-study program that I talk will help Scrum people, but what it really does is it gets you out of Scrum. It lets you start where you are. But I think this is true. I wrote something once about that frameworks need to consider their adopters as their customers, and they tend not to. So you have all these Scrum masters, safe coaches wondering why their people don't like it and complaining about it instead of asking why they don't like it and what can I do about that. So anyway, so I was looking at different things. Well, see, the other piece is this. People have convinced it's gotten insidious. It's throughout the industry that it takes a long time to be a master. Well, you know what? It does take a long time to be a master, but we don't need to be masters. We want to be proficient. So if I have an approach and you justify how slow it is because it takes a long time to be a master, like that means anything, doesn't mean anything. I don't want to be a master. Anybody in the ACE program will tell you, I don't even feel like I'm a master of Amplio. We change it every week. Do masters change every week? Well, maybe that is mastery. But proficiency is what I'm looking for. I'm not even looking for virtuosity, being a virtuoso type thing. Just be proficient. But we're not even competent generally. Now, why do I say that? Because when I go into places, they're not doing things that any competent person would do based on verifiable theory and practices. So this is, again, this illogical thing. So I'm going for proficiency. And I think it only takes a few months to become proficient. Now, I'm not saying I accomplished this in the Amplio University program because I see a lot of deficiencies in the program. I'm very blessed. Y'all don't complain about it. I would be complaining about it. But on the other hand, it's because I think there's an acknowledgement that what we're taking on is a huge task. So when I do a presentation or when we have a session and it's like really brilliant, I tend to see what I could write up and that I don't have it. So I demean it. But in fact, there's amazing stuff. What we've done, I just so love this new model of coaching we came up with. This is so brilliant. And I still have more to do. So I got to go back through it and add to it. But using the coaching kata to teach and convey, it's very exciting to me. And you don't even need to know all this. Just even knowing coaching kata exists, that there's this stepwise thing. Sorry, I'm getting off. So let's come back to here. So what increases learning? What slows learning down? These are conversations that are totally ignored. Now, my background is science. I studied mathematics for 5 years. But mathematics was where I was majoring because I didn't want to become a physicist or something like that. I had a kind of a minor in pre-med as well, but I decided I didn't want to go into med school. And then I have an engineering degree from MIT. So I've got engineering, computer science, mathematics, and psychology, believe it or not. I've always been interested in psychology and people. And then in the 80s, I got involved in that. And to me, all that stuff requires some self-reflection. And none of it is present in the framework community that I see. Correct me if I'm wrong. So then I started looking what's missing. So this is like kind of, what's missing is, value stream analysis, which, okay, yes, it takes a few hours to learn this, or read Flow Engineering by Steve Perra's book. It's great. Inherent simplicity. Most people don't even know what this term is, but basically, in a nutshell, it's Ellie Goldrat's view, comes from the choice, part of theory of constraints, that and be clear, when I say theory of constraints is has had an arching path. It started kind of with the goal in manufacturing. Where he started decades ago is not where it ended up. Where he ended up is from his daughter's book, Goldrat's Rules of Flow, which is really brilliant. But inherent simplicity is the idea that underneath it all, there's a few governing factors, and there are. Even in complex systems, complexity just obscures the factors, but they're still there. Okay? There's not magic taking place in the world, but there are things you do not see, and that's what we call complexity. Theories of flow, product management. I bring this down into two things. There's the jobs to be done, which is Ulwick's book, but I kind of came to it myself from Flores's work and clear requirements. We now call this requirements by objective. It hit me that everybody's saying you can't document requirements well. And I think that's true in the sense you can't document the individual pieces, but you can document the intention. That's why we called it. What's the objective? Anyway, identifying mindset. People talk about mindset. Oh, they don't have an agile mindset. By the way, can anybody tell me what that means? Does it even mean anything? I suggest it doesn't mean anything. Why? Because nobody agrees what the agile mindset is. This is not a new thing, by the way. I've written about this, but nobody seems to notice it. So the Agile Manifesto was written in February 2001, almost as a happenstance accident. There were a bunch of people at Snowbird in Utah, and they just got together and they decided to write this up. And some of the people that should have been there weren't there. Tom Gill being one of them. Most of those people knew Tom. Most of those people said he had a big influence, but it was a kind of an impromptu thing that happened. You had mostly team-centric people there, XP Scrum. You had some higher view people like Jim Highsmith, Alistair Coburn with his crystal approach and things. Anyway, I was at the Agile Manifesto Take Two, 2011. They had a get together of the Agile people, of the Agile Manifesto people. I was not at the first one. About 2/3 of the Agile Manifesto people of the first one were at the second one. Dave Anderson was also invited. I think we were invited because it was a couple of years after we'd brought out Kanban. And I can still remember this. I have this picture in my mind. We got into different groups. We got into a whole bunches of stuff, but at some point we got into these different groups about who are aligned with what. And there were like 6 or 7 little groups of anywhere from 2 to 5 people. In other words, 10 years after the Agile Manifesto, with 2/3 of the Agile Manifesto people there were 7 different opinions of what Agile was. 2011. It's only gotten worse, not better. So what Agile is, what the Agile mindset is silly. I do think what we need are things like this. State what you believe. This is what Amplio is based on. I'm not going to go over this, but these are the belief systems. You agree with them? Great. You don't agree with them? Let's talk about it. I'm not saying these are verifiable as proof. Rather, it's the attitude to take. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you agree with the attitude or don't agree with the attitude? And what I've been doing is I've been writing more and more. I haven't finished all of them, but I think of the 14 I've written now through 10. So, between scope, time, and resources, actually, I greatly expanded this because I've talked about the Penta. Yeah, just one second, Rick. And then I wrote about it, and then I used the Penta at the end. Yeah, Rick.
Um, Two things. One, I didn't want to interrupt your flow, so I had just been adding stuff to the chat,
Oh, good.
questions that pop up. And then the second thing is, in my experience, depending on which organization you're working within, what you believe, you can, and it depends on your approach, but it can be instead of questioned as from a space of curiosity, it's
Yeah.
often just either ignored and then you're kind of shadow banned.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing that out there that there's a reason people stop pushing because leadership doesn't want to hear it sometimes.
Yeah. Now you asked some awesome questions in the chat. So let me pause and talk about those
Okay.
because you're also conveying some of this illogic. You're not conveying, you're exposing some of the illogic that's out there. Okay.
Okay.
So they do not hold space. That's kind of a dogma thing, that sometimes might be a better place, but a good framework would have you ask questions. See, instead of frameworks answering questions, frameworks should cause the asking of questions. In fact, let me just throw that in there, and then I can write frameworks should be spawning questions. Okay, that was the joke Fernando Flores used to always say. He would defer it in a demeaning way. He was South American, so he had a different culture than the United States. He would say how Europeans would be dismissive of Americans because Americans think the purpose of a question is to get an answer, whereas people who are really trying to discover things know the purpose of a question is to get another question. So frameworks should get us questions, but I really like this. Do established practices slow down innovation? The answer is yes and no. Depends how you use them. Depends if you challenge them. We had a really good conversation yesterday. And Mike, I have got to admit, I loved your response to my rant about the drawers. This was a simple thing. So I have these plastic drawers that are on the bottom of my closet, and I hate how they're designed because I just have light clothes in them, and I always have to bend down, which isn't that bad a thing for me, but I'm a little older. I'd rather just reach down and open them and have the opening hold at the top. And he pointed out that there's a reason they're at the bottom, because if you put a lot of heavy stuff in there, you want to lift it up as you pull it out, which is now interesting because, yes, I've been judging these incorrectly, but it exposed something, which is consider different ways to use the drawers. And when would pulling from the top be useful? When would pulling from the top be bad? When would pulling from the bottom be useful? When would pulling from the bottom be bad? And what I noticed I was doing is I have a bias toward usability of what I expect, not usability because there's a risk. So what Mike said was brilliant. So the question is, if you've got a requirements method, are you pointing that out? Are you pointing out to look at that? Expect ACEs, expect to see this in requirements by objectives really soon. See, in that case, frameworks help innovation if you consider the requirements by objective as our new way of writing stories and features and things. See, that helps because it guides you. Does it tell you that always do it one way or the other? No. Does it tell you that you have to pay attention to the way? No, actually, it's probably a properly designed thing because I'll get more mad if I can't open the drawer than having to reach underneath to open the drawer. Okay, so yeah, I like that. Yeah, I've actually extended this thing too. Thomas is where he says a good tool helps you work better when a great tool helps you think better. So yeah, it's great. Okay, good. Okay, so the point is, and I'm almost done with my rant. There's no clarity anywhere. There's no acknowledgement, and this is the real irony. There's no acknowledgement that explicit description of things is useful. In fact, there's denial of it. In 2009, Ken Schwaber vilified me and David Anderson for talking about explicit workflows. He said, oh, then it'll become rote and people will just do it. And what's ironic is Scrum, without the explicit workflows, has become rote and immutable. No, explicit workflows is bad logic. Explicit does not mean permanent, does not mean something to follow. It means explicit. It means we've stated what it is. So we've gotten into this confused thing. There's also not integrated coaching. There's not effective training methods. Okay. So these were some ideas. And I said, okay, Al, I can have, and I love these comments you're all making. This is perfect. Perfect. Please more. Don't, if a thought crosses your head, if the thought crosses your head and right after that, it says, I wonder if I should bring it up now. The answer is yes. Now. Okay. So let's get clear about that. So I was wanting to figure out, there was a picture here and it just went away. Did somebody, oh, there it is. Somebody moved it or I moved it, who knows? Okay, so I'm going to teach you a game. Let's give credit where credit is due. I'll pull this up. I think I've got this. I'm sure I do. Hang on a second. I just did this at the last second. I forgot, oh, I should tell you where this comes from. I always like to acknowledge. Here it is. Okay, that's spiritual book I'm reading, but that's not the book I want. If you have not read this book, get it. I don't care how old it is. I don't care that you don't need to use his anymore because we have collaboration boards. Okay, I don't care about that. It's just a good book to read. This is Innovation Games by Luke Holman. I'm looking for the sailboat game. somebody modified this to do speedboat. I kind of like speedboat better, but I couldn't find the picture I used for speedboat. Thought this would be faster, but I think I'm going to have to search for it. Oh, he doesn't call it sailboat game. Sure, I got it from here. Maybe I just, actually, it might not be in the book. That's interesting. I got it from Luke. I know that. And yeah, here it is. Oh, he called it speedboat. Okay, well, that's funny. I kind of remembered he called it sailboat. So the idea is the game. So this thing is cool because it gives you these games. It gives you a setup. It gives you how, different aspects of the game. But I'm not going to go through this. I just wanted to acknowledge uh, Luke. Okay, brilliant guy, one of my favorite people on the planet. Besides, he's a wonderful person. I've known him for a long time. He's had a big influence on me. So let's talk about this. This is the game, and the game is this. I don't know why I have that block. Oh, hurting or hindering. So I could maybe get a better one. This is good enough. What I want to do is this. The game is pretend you're in the sailboat. Okay. And there's like wind that helps you. What are the forces that help you? And there is some power to sailboat over speedboat because sometimes these things that help you, you have no control over the wind. You have no control over these forces. So whether it's speedboat or sailboat, I'm not sure one is inherently better than the other. This is where I'm trying to get to, trying to land there. These are risks. These rocks represent risk. The anchor is hindering me. So what we do is we look at, now I have these out here because I was just dumping my thoughts. This is not like saying move these. Okay, I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that at all. These were just some of my thoughts. I'm going to move them over here so you can see them. And I'm going to put these over here, down here. And what I want you to do is put stickies. I want you to copy mine, move mine. I don't care. Make up your own. That's what I really want. And move them. So like one of the things I think that hinders us, just double, you can, let me make this immutable and then, not immutable, well, lock it. That's the same thing. Yeah. See, now I can double click. When you can change it, the double click thinks you're referring to the picture. So I think what hurts us is poor training methods. Okay. Just start putting them in. We can do this for 5 minutes. Then we're going to do something else. Go ahead and get started. What are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? What helps us? Put that up here. What are our risks? Put them near the rocks. What's hold us back? I've given you some things to talk about, but do not limit yourself to those things. Actually, let me tell you where let me add one other thing here because I think this is important. This is why I actually like speedboat maybe better. In this area right here, see this I like the helping because it's like helping, but you don't have any control. Here's put helping that you have control. Like I've said, understanding value streams. See, there's a difference. What you have control over that helps and what you don't have control that helps. Okay. Let's keep going. You got less than a minute. Okay, time's up. This is good. Let me make a couple of comments. Or no, before I do, any comments anybody wants to make, any observations or insights or anything like that?
I love the diversity in the comments. You're all coming from we have our own lenses. So it's interesting to see the individual comments being posted.
See, now that's a really good observation, Mike. Do frameworks help diversity or limit diversity? See, that diversity is good. This whole we have different cultures. They're different. It's funny because when you talk about different cultures or you talk about different communities, there's sometimes this idea, oh, they shouldn't be different. No, they are different. You're crazy if you don't acknowledge it. Differences are good when you respect the differences and know you can learn from the differences. Other comments? So I like that too in the chat. Should put frameworks. Oh, there's some more chats here I haven't seen. Do frameworks increase? Now, sometimes diversity is something you do have to deal with. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, actually, your question about general hatred is square peg in the round hole. I think there's a lot of that, but there's also some people don't like to be told what to do. And they don't understand. They certainly don't like to be told when they don't understand. See, this whole idea of follow to understand is very demeaning. A lot of developers get upset with that. Yeah, that's nice, Thomas. I'm just reading the quotes here. Okay. So here was another thing I noticed, and I started putting in some color. So I changed, there's a human aspect to this. So this past failures, it's kind of interesting. Past failures could be good and bad. But human nature tends to be bad because, oh yeah, we're just going through this again because we don't have safety, fear of failure. I changed these colors to match this. I was trying to say, what is the implication or the cause of because of how people operate? See, toxic management is a people thing in a lot of ways. And where is that talked about, by the way? Like, I mean, talked about like what you do, not just say respect people, trust people. By the way, that can go both ways. In net objectives, I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars by trusting my people. I made millions of dollars by trusting my people. So I'm not saying it was a bad move. But a lot of the trust was misplaced. And I learned that there are two types of trust. And I never hear this talked about. Do you trust that people are doing their best? Absolutely. Do you trust they're capable of getting the job done? That's insane.
Yeah, I wrote down one toxic management, Alan. I wanted to maybe comment on it.
Oh, please, please, please.
Yeah, so there is an interpretation, there is an old management theory. I can't remember the exact name, but I'm sure one of you guys will. That basically says you have many phases and you choose those phases to manipulate people in order to manage them. It's a form of Machiavellism, but there's actually a theory of management that teaches this. And I remember once in a very large financial institution finding a manager uh, who actually wanted me to adopt that and be deceptive in order to manipulate those around me. And I remember telling him, well, I have one face. When I tell you what I believe, I truly believe. And I don't think this is right. And he gave me a book, the book that actually taught this. And I'm like, okay, this is a serious problem because there's a theory behind it. And some managers believe is the right thing to do. So there's two types of toxic management. There's one that is genuinely Machiavellian, right? The person behind it is narcissistic, the triad of evil is narcissistic, is genuinely toxic, is an evil person. But there's another one that is deceptive. They've been sold this idea that in order to manage humans, they have to be manipulative in nature. And every time humans, we are fairly smart. So we eventually figured out the lie, eventually figured out the click, eventually figured out what's wrong. So long term, this approach is destructive. And I think we've all found it. I see the faces, we all have white hair here. So we've all found it. and I just want to call it out as the lie that it is, because it's a pervasive lie. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a this is perhaps one of the things of where you have to look at where are you coming from? Are you coming from getting people to do the best they can for their benefit or to do what you want them to do for your benefit? And to me, that's the core thing that we don't have much. And the thing to recognize, and this is one of the biggest things I think is missing, is there are 2 points here, and I've been talking about this most recently, and I've been starting to write it up in the learning kata that we use in Amplio. It's one way to think about it, is you have to acknowledge that people will only do what they perceive to be in their best interests. However, there are sometimes things that they don't notice are in their best interest because they're not aware of them, or they're not aware of why they're in their best interest. So what a good coach will do is get them to see that. Now, some people call that manipulation because you have an intention. Well, it's not manipulating just because you have an intention. I don't consider that manipulation. But if you do consider that manipulation, and I'm not saying you did, Joseph, I'm just talking in general here. In fact, it's kind of interesting because there's a connotation about it, but to be candid, I'm not even sure if that's just a connotation we add. Yeah, it can be abusive, deceptive, or underhanded, or perhaps good. But there's so much negative connotation to the word manipulation, I tend to avoid it.
I think that the distinction is when there's a Machiavellian
Yes,
intention and lies are involved,
that's correct.
right? So
I
the
think
coach
that's
would
right.
not lie to you.
That's right.
He
No, I
may
don't.
actually push you some way, but he's not lying to you.
Yeah. I have found sometimes confusing you, but not lying is a good method. In fact, I haven't talked about that yet. I should, in the ACE coaching, I need to add a session on that when we get to the coaching. When I used to teach, oh, Susan, you go first, then I'll explain this.
I just wanted to say, I think you could use persuasion as the more general term. And persuasion can be good or bad, and when it's bad, it's manipulative.
Yeah, but persuasion is, I know, and I'm trying to get them to see it. It's really more a discovery process. To me, coaching is a discovery guiding process. And there's no quite, I don't know if there's a word for that. Discovery and guiding, I guess. Guiding is the word I use.
There's always reframing.
Yeah, but reframing is a good term as well. I'm just going to mention it because it came to my mind and I realized I should write this up. So when I was teaching, I teach a lot of do a lot of technical training. I mean, taught hundreds of courses over my career on design patterns and advanced architecture and things. And we had several technical courses, but there was a 3-day design patterns, getting you the idea of architecture, Chris Alexander and all that. And then there was what we call advanced, we called it patterns thinking, or thinking in patterns. And it was how to use patterns to create architecture. And the way I did the workshop was the first day was mostly to bring up all the issues and completely confuse people. That was intentional. I wasn't saying anything to confuse them intentionally, but I knew that if I brought up all these old issues, that the current state they had been thinking of wouldn't work. It would overwhelm them. Okay, I was confusing through overwhelming. And I learned this technique in actually a personal development workshop where they wouldn't lie to us, they wouldn't manipulate us in that sense, but we'd start seeing so much stuff, we'd kind of go, "Oh my God," you know. And I always wondered if it was the right approach. It was very frustrating for me. I can remember once my wife, I've been with her for, I don't know, 37, 38 years, very most loving person on the planet. I say that seriously, that I know anyway, her affections toward me. So this is an amazingly supportive, loving partner. And she used to go with me on the road when I do training. And I can still remember this. It was about the third or fourth, fifth, maybe time I taught this advanced course. And I came and I said, "Oh, I hate this workshop. Everybody's confused and nobody knows what's going on and I don't know what to do." And I was looking for sympathy, you know? It's a tough day. And she said, "Ah, you always say that after the first day of this workshop." And I said, "What the hell? You're supposed to be my loving partner. What's this?" And then I didn't say that, but that's what I thought. And then I thought about it. I said, she's right. Every day, every time I've done this workshop, and every time since then I did that workshop, that was it. And the point was to break down what they knew and then to put it all back together the next day. And I always was successful. We had super high marks in this workshop. Sometimes you do have to dismantle things, but I never did it by lying. I never did it by manipulating. I just exposed the flaws of how they were thinking. And then we built it back up with the tools we'd learned. Anyway, it's an interesting side comment. I mean, this whole thing. So here's my question. I got two sets of questions now that you've done this. Or any other comments? I'm looking for comments. I'd rather you talk than me.
Maybe just one comment that I find a lot, and I put it, maybe later we can talk about it. I put it there as the consequence of this attitude with agile coaches. And I've seen now like two companies that I know about, medium-sized companies and startups that had banned coaches, like literally banned them, and had basically created some sort of hodgepodge approach and justified the banning. And I can go into the details. And it was not out of hatred, but it was out of efficiency obsession. And they saw coaches as not providing value and very expensive to have.
Yeah.
And this is something that, I mean, we may talk about at any time, but I've seen the same outcome, meaning banning coaches from
Yeah.
several reasons, but they all end up at the same result.
It's a good point, and it actually is maybe a dilemma I need to just think about for a while, because the interesting thing about my approach is it can be used as inside it, you create a framework that you use if you want, but it could also be used that there's no framework at all. And it could be used, the coaches are there as guides. And also, I think coaches are quite useful, but I think one coach per team is absurd. It's just way expensive. But we've been convinced, the community has been convinced that, well, this is a tough job, so you need lots of them. And I think that's silly. When we were at Net Objectives, we would typically have one coach work for 3 to 5 teams. And there are reasons that would be more efficient. And maybe I should write about this, because I'm really glad you brought this up, Joseph, because I think there's a there's a conflation why people are banning coaches. And they're, again, in some ways, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, but there's reasons to throw it out at the same time. Any other comments? Yeah, that's good. I like that one a lot. I think it's, see, because this is what I'm looking for, is how do we move forward in a more intelligent way in the middle of things? And by the way, Thomas, the Gartner hype cycle was brilliant. I'm so glad you put that in there. It was very useful. And you could see that. I could look back and see that.
I'd like to comment and pick
Please.
up on what Joseph just mentioned. I think the antipathy or even hatred towards a method that used to be all the rage yesteryear and is not what is sort of what it was hyped up to be. That manifests itself, like Joseph said, in hatred for not just the method, but also for the people that coach it, that teach it, that are certified in it. And what you may not know is that we found that sometimes when people don't like the advice from other coaches or other people or managers, when they talk to an AI system, they may be more open to seeing the limitations or the limiting beliefs or even the errors of their ways. And that we suspect there's a lot of psychology with that. For example, when you talk to a machine and it just points out some improvements where you can improve, you don't feel like you lose face in front of the machine, right? You can just openly admit, yeah, I did this. This was kind of stupid, which you might not want to do with a coach, much less with a manager or something, right? And so in previous sessions, I think that was before you joined our group, we suspected that there is an opportunity for a combination approach where the coach has sort of the creative and the human empathy parts of it, but some of the principles and the techniques and some of the underlying methods can perhaps also be taught by a dialogue with the machine, and that may actually even be easier for people to then accept those recommendations.
You know, Thomas, I'm glad you said that because there are a couple of things. First of all, it's dead on, but it kind of makes me realize, and I put this up here, the lack of empathy and emotions may go both ways. In other words, it may be a helping and it may be a hurting. You could say, well, I know how I can make AI be more human-like, is that after it tells you what you've done wrong, it could add, well, your mother would be very disappointed in you. And now it's all human. Anyway, sorry, no, just crossed my head. Okay, so here's,
I wanted to respond to
yeah,
Thomas
please,
quickly. Just
please, yeah, this is perfect. This is what I really want, is this discussion I'm
yeah.
looking for.
So yeah, thank you, Thomas, for that. That's very insightful. One thing that first I'll mention that I told this, I know Al from a long time, and I just finally finished a book on draft form about more efficient and better organizations. It used to have the title Agile in it, and I've completely removed it. I'm in the process of removing it from most of the book. So just to give you like an idea of, I do perceive this as a problem. It'll be there, but it'll be inside. And the thing that I notice is, and two of my friends have pivoted out of Agile. I'm in the process of making it part of my practice, but not the main part.
Yeah.
For the last 3 years or so, it has been a secondary part, an important secondary part, but a secondary part. And the one thing that I notice is growing in Agile is Agile with another name, which I would call it something like the efficiency experts. The people that come in, make you more efficient, make you better, stay there for maybe a few months, get out completely. You know, they charge well, they get out, you get faster, you get better, you get more efficient. Bye. See you in 60 days or 90 days, or maybe see you in a year. Come back, do the same thing and repeat. I have a couple of friends who are doing that. It's working out for them. It's more difficult because it's not every month, right? And it has to be medium to large budget in order to justify it. But if you are a solo consultant or a small firm of like 1 to 10, you can charge a fraction of a management consultant and actually deliver stuff. Yeah. So that's one thing I noticed.
Yeah, Jens, I see your hand's been up.
I have two topics right now because of what you said, Joseph. I hope you're talking about more effectiveness than efficiency, because I've seen that all the time, that people talking about efficiency in the teams and they're not even working on the right stuff. This on one hand. The other thing, Al, you mentioned being a coach for 3 to 4 teams at the same time. And I was a team coach for 3 teams. And that remembered me that I always had the impression that I'm leaving the team at the wrong moment. Because, yeah, you're heading over to the other team for whatever reason. And then when you came back in the previous team, you heard how the conversation, how the discussion progressed, and you thought, oh man, if I even when I even be there when they discussed it right in time, you could have get them another impression or another how to say it and another inject other ideas
That's right.
how to proceed.
Yeah.
And so you are re-rolling the discussions again and again and again, and that's why people started to hate me, for example. Yeah, because I said, hey, yeah, you discussed it already, but there are other things you had to consider.
Well, let's look at this for a couple of minutes. We're just about out of time, but I want to bring in something. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And I believe that when you do something like now I'm going to be at multiple teams, you can't just do what you've been doing and being at multiple teams. There are 2 other things that need to take place. So what we used to do is we'd go into teams and there were 2 things we would do before, we'd like have one-on-ones and then we'd go to more. And the 2 things we did were this: we'd set up effective Kanban boards. Now I say Kanban, I don't mean they're doing Kanban. I mean, you have explicit workflows. You could see what's going on. You could look at the board and know how they're working, and you would know what their agreements are. This does not take a lot of documentation. In fact, I've talked about it. I've got it in one of my books someplace. How do you tell what an effective board is? But there's a second thing you have to instill, and this is something that's denied as possible. They have to have some understanding of what's going on in knowledge work. They have to appreciate delays, workflow. They have to understand what, again, I mentioned inherent simplicity. Now, when they understand that, it doesn't mean they will get the right answers, but they will get when they're not getting the right answers. Let me say that again. This is very important. It's not important. I'm going to say it a different way. It's not, well, it is important to get the right answer. So I don't want to say it that way. To me, it's more important. It's very important to get when you don't have the right answer. That's important. And that's easier to get to than get always the right answer. So there needs to be some understanding that they have that you can walk away and then come back. Yeah, Susan, I can see you're thinking.
Yeah, and also if you're working with multiple teams that have dependencies on each other, you can foster the alignment and communications about I can't do this, so you do that. So could you do that before you do this other thing that doesn't affect us? And well, no, I can't because it would affect them. And you can finally get people talking aligned and talking to each other about getting things done from the done point of view, as it were, rather than I did my little piece and I don't know why you don't like it.
Yeah, so there's the running multiple teams has advantages, such as looking what you just said, the cross view, and the disadvantages, what you said. I'm not, Jens, I'm not denying anything you said is of being spread. But my sense is the being spread, there are things you can do about it, and the advantages of seeing the bigger picture. So kind of this half coach, half consultant is important, and visibility of people that you can, I mean, that you what you can see. I remember if you're ever up in I don't think he runs these anymore, but there's a furniture maker up in Bellingham, north of here, north of Seattle. And I remember going there. I'd heard to watch him to see them because I heard they ran their whole production. It was a custom built. They made handmade furniture, and I'd heard that they had run it on lean, using lean. This is a long time ago, like maybe 15 years ago. And he used to have public tours, and I told him who I was, and the president, the owner, offered and gave me. I was there for a few hours, a private tour. I was like blown away, and I thanked him profusely. I remember asking him why he did that, given I wasn't going to buy that much furniture. In fact, it wasn't to sell me furniture. That was clear. But the reason is, he said, because he knew I would appreciate what they were doing, which I did. So it was like showing off a toy, for him. And I mean, really. And I was just aghast. I would go, my jaw was open half the time. And one of the techniques that he used was these open boards, these Kanban boards, these lean boards. Maybe we shouldn't call them Kanban boards, because that's where the term came up, because that's what David and, at wherever that company was with, created. He didn't actually create Kanban. He was one of 5 people, but that's what they did. Yeah, that should be a better revealing name, because the board has nothing to do with Kanban. It has to do with lean principles, and lean Kanban's somewhat laced on lean. And how do you make this stuff clear? And one of the reasons people don't is because of this lack of safety. I saw somebody put that on, fear of failure, fear of people. It's not safe. Somebody put that down. I don't see where it is now. But the toxic culture. But that's because people don't understand systems thinking. And it's funny when I talk about that, people say, oh, yeah, we get systems thinking. It's in the Agile manifesto and all this. Well, it isn't in the manifesto. Some people get it and they bring it. But they'll say, yeah, we get systems thinking, but that person's to blame. That's an inconsistent belief. Systems thinking tells us it's not the individuals. Anyway, so we're kind of out of time. This was intended to be kind of a thought-provoking session, which it seems like it was. Let me know if you want more of these. Can you give me like a thumbs up, thumbs down, neutral for this approach? I mean, I kind of found this interesting myself. Good. Because to be candid, here's the bottom line. We know what to do. It is known what to do. There's no question it's known what to do. And it's not I have the answers. I've just collected the answers from lots of places. So I have a different answer, yes. But this is known. This has been known. This has been known for 15 years. So the question isn't what do we need to know how to do? Yeah, Amplio is getting better every week, and I'm excited about that, but that's not the real problem. And maybe that's what I am coming to realize today and why I'm in this funky mood. I just keep thinking, oh, we got all this, now I got to write it up. And the answer is I'm solving the wrong problem. Don't worry, I'm going to keep with ACE. I'm going to keep it going. I'm not going to stop that. But the real problem is, how do we get people to appreciate that the approach we are taking and others are taking, again, we're not alone. That's the real issue. And maybe we just have to accept that only a few people are really interested in this and work with them. And I think maybe it's that latter one, because I already see the next wave. I wrote something this morning, which I thought I wasn't intending to be funny, but somebody said it was funny. I thought it was a true statement. AI is not going to dumb us down any more than frameworks already have. It will just continue the process and create a new line of certifications. I think this is totally true. How do we break that? That's my problem. So anyway, I'm going to stop this now. We do have another session, and maybe I need to reframe it out of what you said, Joseph. So I really appreciate it. Just like this is my staging. This is where we're putting together with Buddy Press a discussion board, because I don't really like the LinkedIn. So I have put in to the, I'm putting in, I haven't put it in yet, in the university. It's not actually, you'll notice there's no longer Scrum. I'm not selling it anymore. It's just part of the community practice. And I'm calling it Amplio Scrum. And I have the lessons all laid out. This is a self-study. I'm not having live sessions on this, but you'll be able to ask questions and think this is basically what it is. These are the concepts. And I'm wondering, I think I've been, I call it Amplio Scrum because it's kind of like Scrumban, takes you from Scrum to Kanban. I didn't want to call it Scrumplio. At least that's my rationale. But maybe we should just call this something else instead of like I've improved this. You're giving me some thought to think about. Because basically it is. It's basically if you came from Lean and wanted a quick start at the team level based on Lean and Flow, what you would do. And I have no idea what to call it that would be effective. It seems Amplio Scrum appeals to people who are stuck with Scrum, but some other name, I used to call it Amplio Team, and maybe I should just call it Amplio Team. I don't know. Send me your thoughts.
Better.
What, you like Amplio Team better?
Yes.
And I could talk about how it gives you a transition. So I think I'll do that. The reason I want to do this in the next COP is none of this stuff is complicated. Originally, I was going to sell this for like $2.99, live sessions, 8 live sessions over 4 months. And then I thought to myself, Al, this is gettable just reading about it. Anybody who's got a CSM could read these things or videos or whatever and get them. And that's the travesty. What's separating us from really being effective is a little bit of stuff that we already almost know, but it's not being focused on.
Al, I have one thought about this, and you've mentioned it earlier about starting where people are.
Yes.
And some people are more technical, some people are more strategic. And speaking about myself specifically, it helps to really dive into the principles because it seems like that's where inherent simplicity is born.
Yes.
And I wonder if, do you have a track just
Oh, I do.
specific? Okay.
Absolutely.
For principles?
And this is in the community of practice. It's called Amplio Foundations, right?
Foundations. Okay.
Amplio Axioms.
Yeah.
And
So
these
that would
are
probably
about
be
an
better.
hour each of videos that go you through. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But you know what you just said, it reminds me too. What I have to do, and this is I don't know, I've had this judgment of me that by the time you hit 72, you're supposed to have it all together. Well, I haven't met that bar.
Yeah.
I've had the same problems I've had for as long as I can remember. And one of them is trying to fit in. And I should know I don't fit in. You guys know I don't fit in. I think that's why you're attracted to me. But I still have that. So I really like the Amplio team. And then the reason you triggered this for me, Rick, is because Amplio team works for several different places from where people are. If you're here, this is how you use it. If you're here, here's how you use it. If you're here, here's how you use it. And why does it work? It's like physics. Okay, one last point, just because it's just funny, and my mind, it's a squirrel. But one of the best movies in my mind, if you want to learn how to talk to people, don't talk to them this way, but the logic is My Cousin Vinny. If you've not seen My Cousin Vinny, you've got to watch it and pay close attention to when he's talking to the guy who says he spent, this won't ruin the movie. You got to pay attention to when he's talking to the guy who says the people are in and out in 5 minutes. And he knows this because he was cooking grits on his stove. And the way he talks to them is he says, okay, it's 5 minutes. So you were using instant grits. This is no self-respecting Southerner would use instant grits. So now he knows he's not using instant grits. Well, if you cook grits, it takes at least 10 or 15 minutes. But this guy said he cooked grits in 5 minutes. So he doesn't argue with them. He accepts the premise. He could cook grits in 5 minutes on his stove. But then Vinny says the thing. Oh, so you're saying the laws of physics don't apply on your stove. On your stove, a molecule of water gets into a grit faster than anywhere else in the universe. See, now don't add the New York attitude he has, which is hysterical. But this is a good way to change people's minds, is you let them see the results of their own communication without all the added judgment. It's really it's a fun movie, but that part in particular is really important. And you'll notice he's got this attitude, but if you take the attitude away, he's doing a kind of arguing that is really, really brilliant throughout the movie. And I just think I don't think they intended that. I just think it's funny. Anyway, thanks for this. After next week, I'm gonna In fact, I might do more of these, not just even more ACOP sessions. I've been thinking, I've gone all over the place and I know I keep changing things. But here's my model. I'll just tell you what I'm looking at. I'm happy to have more ACOP sessions as long as they're things that move the ACE program along, because that's my main body. But on the other hand, this was a very informative session for me too. And I think next week, and it might be I'll do more. So if you have particular topics, this is for the ACEs and the people just in the ACOP, let me know, because one thing we did last time was when Andrew presented security. I think there are more of those we can do. Okay. And I think those are worthwhile doing because those become a good vehicle for all this. Anyway, thanks for your candidness. I really liked how y'all jumped in and contributed. This is what we need to have. We need to grow this community and find the people who are thinking this way. So I appreciate this. It's a gift to me, and I'll get this up online too. Take care.
Thank you, guys. It's first time I joined, so thank you all for the invite.
Well, thanks, Joseph.
Be nice to bye.
Yeah, it's
Thank
glad
you
to have
all.
you here.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye bye.